Good evening, folks. I apologize. We're a couple of minutes past the hour, a few last-minute loose ends to tie together. This time we'll have our invocation, if you'd bow with us, please. Heavenly Father, again, what a joy it is to come to you and petition you, and we thank you for that privilege. We thank you for each one here who has an interest and a concern for the actions of this board and the good of this county. We just pray you'll bless their efforts as they go about their daily affairs, operating in our interest and the interest of others. And we ask for wisdom for this board tonight. We have several decisions to make. We just pray that what we do will delight you, and it will honor you, and it will please you, and that it will serve your people well. And we ask it in your name. Amen. Join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll call on our county manager, Mr. Ron Smith, this evening. Do you have any adjustments of the agenda from the staff?
Mr. Chairman, I have one adjustment. I'd like to remove under administrative matters, item C, which is memo number 7.
Okay. Is that all you have, sir?
Sir.
Any member of the board have any items to add or?
Mr. Chairman, in our agenda packet under Memo 7, there's a copy of House Bill 321, which would just exempt the solid waste department from having to file some redundant reports. I think our manager had sent an email out on this last week. I think we should pass a resolution supporting this, and probably under consideration of the landfill bids would be an appropriate place to do it unless someone.
Actually, I had that
okay.
written down under new business.
Well, under new business would be fine too. It doesn't make much difference.
All right. I thought we might want to discuss that.
Okay.
So we'll add that under new business, House Bill 321. Also, I'd like to add under new business discussion and possible adoption of a resolution in support of Senate Bill 81 as an item. Are there any adjustments, further adjustments to this agenda? Hearing none, the floor is open for a motion to approve this, adopt this agenda.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Commissioner Griffith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have no special recognitions or awards this evening. That brings us to appointment of the board. Appointments before the board. We actually do have a couple. Before we begin with those, though, this evening I'd like to recognize Miss Ashley Lyons. She goes to Bandy High School in Catawba, North Carolina. She's here working on a project for her AP government class. Ms. Lyons, we welcome you and wish you much success in your academic endeavors. So thank you for coming this evening. At this point, I'd like to recognize Ms. Nancy Keith, our Ag Extension Director, and she has an announcement of a new appointment, one we've been anticipating for some time.
Yes, good evening. It is my pleasure to announce the appointment of Teresa Herman as our livestock field crops agent position. Teresa will be taking on the programming responsibilities in both livestock and field crops, which has been vacant for some 2.5 years now. So we're excited to have her with us. Teresa comes to us after serving 2.5 years in Allegheny with the cooperative extension up there, and has had lots of experience with North Carolina Department of Agriculture, meat inspection, and has worked on several research farms and with NCDA. So we'd like to welcome Teresa Herman to Iredell County as our livestock field crops agent.
Okay. Well, welcome, Teresa. We'll look forward to working with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, and I hope to come and visit each and every one of you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Q. We'll move to item A under appointments for the board, and that's a request from the Statesville Regional Development Corporation, the Mooresville-South Iredell Development Corporation, and Mitchell Community College for the adoption of a proclamation proclaiming April 9th, 2013 as Advanced Manufacturing Day. And I'd like to call upon Mr. Mike Smith, Mr. Robbie Carney, Mr. John Merrick, and Carol Johnson at this point, if they'd come up and one of these folks would care to read this proclamation to us. Or present it, whatever you desire. You can do it at the podium, be fine. John, if you'd like to read it to us or present it and tell us what this is about.
Chairman, I would need to have a copy of it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll let you borrow mine. Yeah, there it is. That's the whereas is right there. That's it.
That's correct.
Next time you come to class, bring your homework.
I'd like to read a proclamation declaring April 9th, 2013 as Advanced Manufacturing Day in Iredell County, North Carolina. Whereas a group of public and private organizations have recognized April 9th, 2013 as Advanced Manufacturing Day in Iredell County to highlight the importance of advanced manufacturing in our national and local economy and to draw attention to the many rewarding, high-skilled advanced manufacturing jobs. And whereas the United States is one of the world's largest manufacturing economies, producing 21% of global manufactured products and $1.7 trillion of value each year, or about 12% of the U.S. gross domestic product. For every $1 spent in manufacturing, another $1.35 is added to the economy. And whereas manufacturing supports an estimated 17 million jobs in the U.S., about 1 in 6 private sector jobs. Nearly 12 million Americans, or 9% of the workforce, are employed directly in manufacturing. And whereas U.S. manufacturers are the most productive workers in the world, far surpassing the worker productivity of any other major manufacturing economy, leading to higher wages and living standards. And whereas U.S. manufacturers perform 2/3 of all private sector research and development in the nation, giving more innovation than any other sector, and taken alone, U.S. manufacturing would be the 9th largest economy in the world. And whereas in North Carolina, manufacturers account for 19% of the gross state product, with annual exports exceeding $76 billion. In Iredell County, approximately 300 manufacturers with an annual payroll of $476 million employ more than 14,000 residents. And whereas a day of activities, including student tours and demonstrations, led by Mitchell Community College Technology and Workforce Development, seeks to strengthen technical and academic understanding of young adults with an interest in manufacturing, engineering, and design courses of study. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the Iredell County Board of Commissioners joins the county-wide effort to proclaim April 9th, 2013 as Advanced Manufacturing Day in Iredell County to support and celebrate our local manufacturers and school programs that prepare our future workforce.
Okay. Now, I have another statistic for you. The reason I asked Mr. Merrick to read that is because about 95% of the people in this county talk faster than I do. So I'm going to ask you folks to come through the gate up here, and I'm going to present you with this proclamation, please. Next item we have on the points before the board is a request from the Stop Child Abuse Now SCAN organization for the adoption of a proclamation declaring April as Child Abuse Prevention Month. And that's going to be presented by Miss Amy Isley, Executive Director. Miss Isley, if you come forward, please. And I'll tell you what, I'll read this one. It's not too long. So I'll read. This is a proclamation for Child Abuse Prevention Month, whereas child abuse is a community problem and finding solutions depends on involvement among people throughout the community, and whereas approximately 3 million children are reported abused and neglected in this country each year. Most physical abuse and neglect occurs among children under the age of 2 during the critical period of brain development. And whereas child abuse occurs when people find themselves in stressful situations without community resources. And whereas the majority of child abuse cases stem from situations and conditions that are preventable and engaged in supportive community. Whereas the effects of child abuse are felt by whole communities. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, and the business community. Now therefore, the Iredell County Board of Commissioners hereby proclaims April as Child Abuse Prevention Month in Iredell County and calls upon all citizens, community agencies, organizations, medical facilities, businesses to increase their participation in the effort to prevent child abuse, thereby strengthening the communities in which we live. Adopted this second day of April 2013 by the Iredell County Board of Commissioners. I thank you very much for your dedication to this problem. Work you do in our community. I'm not going to sign this for you to get it. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you again for your work. This time we'll declare the meeting to be in a public hearing in consideration of a release of zoning and subdivision jurisdiction to the town of Mooresville for a property located off Langtree Road between Templeton Road and Edgewood Road in Mooresville, North Carolina. It is approximately 24.1 acres by applicant Alcove Langtree Properties, LLC. Mr. Roskowski, glad to have you with us this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, as I explained to you last month, this is a release of jurisdiction request, again from Alcove Langtree Properties for this 24-acre tract off of Alcove Road between Templeton Road and Edgeway Road. The purpose of these jurisdictional releases is to allow the developer to work with the receiving jurisdiction, which is the town of Mooresville, on their development plans for this property. Given some phone calls that we've had since this has been advertised, I'd just like to clarify for you and the public that the county has no record of what the developer plans to do with this property. But we can clarify that both future land use plans for the county and the town of Mooresville call for this area to be developed for residential and commercial development. The developer, from what I understand, would like to seek additional densities than what could be allowed under the county jurisdiction. Therefore, they've asked for water and sewer, which was granted by the town in February. And we've confirmed today that annexation has been certified by the town of Mooresville for consideration in June. Therefore, in about 3 months, this property will most likely be within the town of Mooresville's jurisdiction. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any member of the board have any questions for Mr. Roskowski? If not, thank you, sir. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in regard to this matter? If you would, please come forward to the microphone and state your name. If not, we'll declare this public hearing closed, and the floor is open for discussion or motion. I would move that we grant this request.
Yeah, I'm looking to see if we've got specific wording we've got to use. I'll make the motion. I was just looking
Okay.
to see.
Well, I'll let you.
I don't see where we have to repeat certain words in this one.
No,
Sometimes the wording was critical and we had to read it verbatim. So if it's not, I'll make the motion that we approve it as presented.
Okay, we have a motion from Commissioner Robertson. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We'll declare the meeting to be in a public hearing in consideration of release of zoning and subdivision jurisdiction to the town of Mooresville for property located at the corner of Charlotte Highway and Laura Road in Mooresville, North Carolina, approximately .66 acres by Cicero and Cindy Sullivan.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. And this is another release of jurisdiction request, but for issues with water service only. There were petroleum storage tanks on this property, and they have polluted the wells on the property, several wells, and the applicants have asked for water service from the town of Mooresville, and they have granted that, and the town of Mooresville does not intend to annex this, but would like this within their planning and zoning jurisdiction. Therefore, we would recommend your consideration of this request.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Roskowski?
This is just a matter of general information, Mr. Roskowski. It probably makes no difference in the way we vote, but why does Mooresville ask to have zoning jurisdiction when they run utilities to a parcel? I don't think Statesville does.
I believe that's a local policy of the town of Mooresville.
I mean, is there any reason for that, or do you have any explanation?
Again, I'm not, it varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, as you pointed out, so it's really just their.
I'm all too familiar with the issue of contaminated wells. I face the same thing and understand what they're doing, have no problem with it whatsoever, but I know Statesville has water customers in areas where they do not have zoning jurisdiction.
Sure.
So they apparently don't require it.
Okay. Any other questions? Is there anyone here who wishes to speak in regard to this matter? If you would, come forward and state your name, please. If not, we'll declare this public hearing closed, and the floor is open for discussion or motion.
Motion to grant the request, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chairman Norman to grant this request. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Smith, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes.
Thank you. The first item that we have is memo number 5, which is a request from John Muhich, I hope I'm saying that right, president of AAA Storage on Highway 150 for approval to develop under the high-density option.
I'm going to actually jump to the aerial here. This is an existing self-storage facility, and as you can see, there are several of these facilities along this stretch of Highway 150. And the applicant is requesting for expansion with additional self-storage units on this site. In order to do so, because they're in the watershed, you will have to consider granting impervious surface allocation to this development up to 43%. You could actually grant up to 50%, but they're asking for 43% in this particular case. And in this site plan, as you'll see up in the upper left, there's actually a stormwater detention pond that will be developed in order to maintain and process stormwater from this site, and that allows them to have the additional impervious surface allocation. Staff recommends this request to you because it does meet the initial criteria for the standards that are within our land development code to allow for additional impervious surface allocation. So tonight you'll be considering whether or not to grant up to 43% impervious surface allocation for AAA storage.
Okay. Any questions of Mr. Roskowski? Okay, if not, the floor is open for a motion.
Motion to approve the high-density option.
Have a motion from Commissioner Boone to approve the request for the high-density option. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Ruskowski has the next item as well.
Well, about a year ago, I was before you talking about this transition that we were going to undergo into the Charlotte Metropolitan Planning Organization, as well as northward into the Unifor Rural Planning Organization, with the South Yadkin River being the dividing line, essentially. Anything south will go to the new MPO, which is now called the Charlotte Regional Transportation Planning Organization, and anything to the north would go into the existing Unifor. You didn't tell me to come back to you till I had fees. Well, I finally have fees. About two and a half weeks ago, this Memorandum of Understanding subcommittee that Commissioner Griffith is serving on, what they have done is they've put together a draft set of fees for the Charlotte MPO. And the intention of the subcommittee is to gather initial yays or nays from all jurisdictions that could be potential members of the new MPO, whether or not they're going to join, and whether or not that the fees that you see, the draft fees, would be acceptable to the jurisdiction. And what the subcommittee is trying to do is figure out how many members are going to join in the future, because how many members we have will directly affect the membership fees. So as you see that list, which is, I believe, the second, that's actually third to the last page in your packet, you see fees for Iredell County. And I'll talk about the two different proposals in a minute. But I want to make sure you understand that if Stallings drops out, or if Lincoln County drops out, then the number of $428,315, which is the match for the MPO that will be spread amongst all the jurisdictions. If any of these drop out, our fees are going to go up. So I just want to make sure that you understand in another month or so I may come back to you with revised numbers. Now, we have with us tonight the Secretary to the MPO, Mr. Bob Cook, and I've asked him to be here because I think he could better address questions you may have regarding how these two fee-based principles or philosophies were developed. One is by population and the other is by vote. Now, what I would like to update you on is the town of Troutman. They have indicated that they would prefer the population method of calculating fees because it's actually less expensive for them. And they're very concerned that if they go by the vote method, then they may not be able to afford to participate. And I did receive word today that the town of Mooresville, in a straw vote in a pre-agenda meeting, they are also looking at going with the population method, which is a little more expensive for them, but they would like to see both Troutman and Statesville be able to participate. So they recognize that those lower fees for those two jurisdictions could be beneficial to them. Now for us, it's double. It's either $12,000 or $24,000. So there's a significant difference for Iredell County. So with that, what I'd like to do is open up discussion on fees, and Mr. Bob Cook is here to help us address that. And then I'd like to close tonight, once you've had a chance to ask all your questions. On the page behind your cover memo, I've got for you two actions and two sub-actions that I'd like for you to consider tonight, whether or not we're going to move forward with participating in both the RPO and the MPO, and then also having a discussion about appointing elected officials to serve in those capacities once the memorandums of understanding are finalized and those two organizations are active. So with that, I'll pause and see if you have any questions of me first, and then I may have to defer to Bob as well.
Okay. Go ahead. Any questions?
Yeah, I did have one question is, on the votes, do the jurisdictions block vote, or can their votes be split?
Mr. Cook.
The way our current MOU is prepared, no. I mean, sometimes in terms of splitting votes, sometimes communities will vote in a block. Perhaps maybe some members from Union County might come together and caucus and decide to establish a particular position on a particular matter. But in terms of splitting votes, no, we don't currently permit that, and that's not been something that's been considered during this revision process.
Are you saying that? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, if that's the case, then I don't see any reason why we would want to either participate, why we would want to be in the population model, because by virtue of because if we use the population model, Charlotte gets 59.9% of the vote. So how they vote, they will decide everything, period. If we go by the vote method, Charlotte has 44.3% of the vote, which doesn't guarantee them a majority. Now, if you do bear with me on the math, and I know for people watching and not having the figures, this is gonna be a bit boring. But Troutman doesn't want to go with the vote method because it'll cost them an extra $4,846. It would cost Statesville an extra $2,549. It would save us $12,573. I mean, if we made up the difference for the two municipalities, and by the way, it saves Mooresville $669. So going by the vote method doesn't hurt them at all. In fact, it helps them. But if we needed to help Troutman or Statesville, we still come out over $5,000 on the positive, and we have a method that it is conceivable that Charlotte just doesn't decide every issue with zero consideration to anybody else.
Robertson, I just want to make one thing very clear, that 59.9% is simply there, and all those percentages in that column are simply there to show what the percentage of the planning area population is for each jurisdiction. It is not a proposed vote.
Of the vote. I'm sorry. Percentage of the vote would be 31 over 73.
It would be 44.3, I believe. Yeah.
Right, and the percent of vote under the vote, that's what we're really looking at this point.
Yeah, it would be 44.3. That's what I'm saying is they don't have the.
But they would still be voting in a block. They would be very close to a majority, get a couple of other municipalities in Mecklenburg County, and they would be able to do anything they wanted.
This has been a point of contention for a few meetings. There are several of us advocating that regardless of how the votes are weighted, that doesn't matter to us as long as it is Charlotte, Mecklenburg, plus 5 additional entities that will agree with them. Charlotte wants Charlotte, Mecklenburg, plus 3. And it has been a point of strong debate. And I can tell you that Statesville, Iredell, Lincoln, and Troutman, of course, Troutman doesn't have a vote. Statesville, Michael Johnson, myself, Lincoln, and is it Union or just Lincoln? Just Lincoln. We are very adamant that it should be Charlotte, Mecklenburg, plus 5. And Charlotte is very adamant that that is not fair. And they want Charlotte, Mecklenburg, plus 3. And we are concerned that Charlotte, Mecklenburg, plus 3 really doesn't give us a legitimate place at the table. That it so dilutes the vote of everybody else that there's not legitimate, that we don't count, basically, that it just discounts our membership. And it's a lot of money to pay to really not be not to be well represented. The flip side of that is if we are not there, then the amount that it takes for Charlotte to make a decision, their weight becomes even heavier. So,
Well, let me ask you a question, though. Under the right scenario, if you had Charlotte, if you went the vote method and you had Charlotte and Mecklenburg, and 3 of their municipalities joined with them, wouldn't they have a majority anyway?
yes. We would like to see it Charlotte, Mecklenburg plus 5, not 3, plus 5.
Or change it to 60%.
Basically require a supermajority to do that.
Right. And we're stuck right there until we determine how many of these jurisdictions plan to participate. We're at an impasse, unfortunately.
I think that, whether we pay $12 or $29 or $35,000, if we don't, there are tens of millions of highway dollars that I guarantee you we won't get table scraps if we're not there fighting. That's just the way it is.
And if I could add, too, to the discussion that tonight I want you to know you're not making the official determination that, yes, we're joining the MPO. You don't even have a memorandum of understanding in front of you. Right. All we're asking for tonight is to consider, if the fees are in this range, are you okay with that at this point? And you will have full disclosure of all the details of the memorandum of understanding. And even at that point, if you're not comfortable with some of the details, you as a board will be able to send that signal back to the MPO at that point. And I don't know when that point's going to be that we have a draft MOU. It's taken some time to get there, but I just want to make sure you were clear on that.
Okay. I think that assessing the fees by the population method would be fundamentally unfair. You'd be talking about taxation without representation. I think the only fair way to assess them is by the vote we actually have. And if you look at the votes and the population, I believe Iredell County has fewer votes per capita than any jurisdiction here. We have 2 votes. Statesville and Mooresville each have 2. We have more population than Statesville and Mooresville. We have more population than the areas of Lincoln and Union County in here, and we even have more population than the areas of Mecklenburg County outside of the city's jurisdiction. We are really getting the shaft on the votes anyway.
Who decided that?
This was done by the MOU subcommittee. They decided to essentially stick with the current vote arrangement with some relatively minor tweaks. Right now, counties in our arrangement both get 2 votes. Both Mecklenburg and Union get 2 votes, and it was decided to basically stick with the system as it currently exists, again with some tweaks.
On a proportional basis, we have 10% of the Charlotte population. At least we should have 10% of their votes. We should at least have 3.
Well, if you add Statesville and Mooresville and all and Troutman, you'd have 7 out of 73 votes. I don't know. But for any jurisdiction, it looks to me like we've got the fewest votes per capita of anyone, or the most population for each vote we have. My sense on this would be that we might participate if our fees are assessed on the actual votes we get. If they're assessed on the population basis, I think it would be very, very, very unfair. I think vote setup's kind of unfair anyway, but it would really be a double whammy if we were paying extra fees. And Mr. Rakowski, you're saying that the only thing we're being asked to decide tonight is just statement of our intent?
It is for both the Unifor and the Charlotte MPO, and looking at some designees from the board to serve to those two organizations.
I will throw this out and see what the board thinks of it, but I would make a motion that we declare our intent to join only if the dues are assessed on a per vote basis, not on a population basis, or some other method where we would be paying a similar amount.
My only concern with that, and I'm with you on this, David, is that if they decide to go by another method, and then we have stated an intent that we will not participate. And based on the absolute, I don't want to use the term aggression, but the just the tenacity that that Charlotte's representative is on the board, it pains me to think that we would not have a voice to counteract that, because their representative is a very dominant voice. And
well, if it would help, I could modify the motion. I'm trying to think of how to word it.
I know.
To say that
I'd give Miss Griffith a word for the gentleman. He's arrogant.
What is it?
I don't know him, but I'm sure your assessment's correct. Maybe modify the motion to say that our decision would be very heavily influenced by whether we were.
I think it's too early to paint ourselves into a corner. We intend to participate. If you telegraph why we won't play, that believe me, that won't hurt their feelings.
Well,
okay, because we caused them the choo-choo train.
Well, I don't know what it'll
do.
I'm not...
So, but believe me, they wouldn't mind if we don't attend the meetings and they don't have to worry about sharing any highway dollars with us.
Well,
and then they can say, well, they should have joined the MUMPO, and then they'll have a good excuse not to spend the money down here over $12,000. Let's not paint ourselves into a corner.
And I'll tell you, Charlotte's representative, on a conversation we had, he told me point blank that he's worked very hard to get the red line in Iredell County and to get these toll lanes in Iredell County. He's worked very hard for that, and he's not very happy that we have opposition to both of those. So
I imagine my disappointment.
And I know it costs a lot of money, and it's much more expensive than the current group that we're in. But I feel like we need to be there, and I feel like we need to have a voice. And it pains me to spend more money to be part of these organizations. But my concern is the amount of dollars for the highway that flow through these organizations and the decisions that are made. We have to participate.
It's millions. It's millions that are spent in highway dollars.
Yeah. There's about $2 million being spent just to finance the bureaucracy of this organization a year. That doesn't lay a square foot of asphalt or buy an acre of right of way or anything. It's just going to fund this organization.
I agree.
My recommendation is that we do participate, but I think we need to be cautious about our participation on how the makeup of the vote, or if it's by vote or by population. We need to be cautious on how we proceed forward with that.
So the motion we have is, Mr. Boone, that we would prefer that we do it by the vote method, and that will impact our decision.
That may impact our decision.
Okay.
Just leave it that way.
All right. Any discussion on that motion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
And also, Mr. Chairman, just a motion as well on to confirm your participation in the Unifor RPO, where the fees will be approximately $3,800. And again, this is just to confirm intent, and you will be presented with a MOU at some point in the near future.
Okay. Can we have a motion on that as well?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay. Motion to approve the uniform request by Ms. Griffith. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimous.
And Chairman Johnson, could I just
Yes,
clarify why we have to be part of two different planning organizations? Because our county has been split by the DOT into two sections, and so from basically 77 South, is that correct? 77 South?
South Yadkin River.
South Yadkin River, we now have to participate with in that Mecklenburg area, and from that area north, our highway dollars come from a different pot of money. And Chairman Johnson, I would be willing to be appointed to both of those boards if this board sees fit. I feel it's important that the same person sit on both boards so that we can have a clear understanding of what's happening in our area, since the two boards affect our county.
Okay.
And I do understand that the requirements have changed as far as what has disclosure that you have to make, and I'm willing to
Okay.
submit that paperwork.
Okay. Well, we can make that appointment whenever
At a
those,
different time, yeah,
but thank you for your willingness. Okay? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
The next item that we have is D, and I'm going to give a little bit of background on this and then invite Robert Woody and David Montgomery up in case I miss anything. This has to do with a motion that was made, or a decision that was made at the winter planning retreat to take that next step in the possibility of constructing a jail. And at the meeting, we discussed moving forward with an architectural firm to allow them to do programming and preliminary design and an initial site analysis, and then also to allow the staff to work with them and the city to put together a proposed text amendment to allow us to do this on Water Street. Staff has done a lot of work so far and has basically gotten to the point that if we're going to do this, we might as well go ahead and ask for these drawings to be done and the site analysis to be done. This is basically, or this would be basically the last step before you would be requested to go into a major construction project. And what we're asking for tonight is that you allow us to work with Mosley Architects. There was $45,000 put aside for this, but enter into negotiations with them to have this done. It doesn't commit you to going any further, but it does allow us to understand whether or not this site is going to be workable and what the true needs and would be and how this would actually take place. I will say that this is basically a process that would be independent of the overall design and construction process for the jail. This, if we were to go out for an RFP, which is not what we're asking for tonight, that would be for the entire jail project, which would be much more significant. This is just a small step in making sure we are able to use this site if that's what you want to do.
Okay, so you don't need to know, in order to do this study, how many beds?
Yeah, basically we will. They'll work very closely with the jail staff now to determine how many beds can be put on that site.
Okay.
Mr. Smith, if during their study, can they include it in this cost? Can they evaluate Commissioner Boone's recommendation of a not as secure with minimum security facility in that vicinity without building a whole new jail? He's mentioned that a couple times. Can they look at the viability of that based on the past 5 years and what the jail has done? Can that also be included in the study?
I would say I'll give you a qualified yes on that. I'm not sure that it could, but these are the people that could answer some of those questions, yes.
Analyze what we really need.
Yes, and also, working, and that's a question I think that goes beyond the jail into the DA's office and judges, and it's kind of far-reaching, so, but we could certainly come up with a, kind of a study on that as a byproduct.
Well, I'd mentioned this before. I don't think I'd be doing my job if I didn't try to have this board explore every avenue possible to get us out for spending as little money as possible, basically, for being as efficient as possible. I don't know whether this option would work, but I thought the one option that maybe we could look at would be building a minimum security facility on Stockton Street. That could be built, per bed, much more cheaply than a high security facility, I think. The laundry and the kitchen would be right across the street. You wouldn't have to build that, and you'd put your lower security prisoners, your nonviolent people, those sorts of people in that. It may save us money. It may delay by several years the time it would take to build the main facility. I don't have the expertise to know whether that will work, but I think that, I owe it to the taxpayer. We owe it to the taxpayers of the county to explore that possibility and look into it. One thing that made me think about this was in the 1990s when the county was basically under a court order to provide or alleviate jail overcrowding before the present facility was built. Mobile units were set up on Stockton Street. That was far from an ideal situation, but they actually made do with prisoners and mobile units there for several months. So, that sort of thing I think it deserves a look. It may or may not work, but I think it deserves to be looked at.
Mr. Smith, are we required to have a certain amount are we required to have a maximum or a medium security facility? Are we required to have, are we allowed to just have a minimum security facility? Do you know what the statutes are on that?
I don't know the answer to that.
In essence, we had one before. I think Mr. Boone's made reference in the past to the mobile units that we had across next to the Bondurant building. I would assume that would still be available under the statute. I don't know of anything that's changed.
The state, I don't know either. The state has several levels of security. Of course, locally, you just have two levels. You have a few isolation cells, and then you have the general population. I think maybe some of the juveniles are segregated, but I don't know if that's really, they're just segregated. I don't know if that's a difference in the security level or not.
And that may be something that we want to approach independent of this particular project, and we could do it at the same time or before. It would just, a lot of it would just be gathering data and figuring out from the people who really can answer those questions, which is not me.
I don't know what we'll end up doing. I just think we need to explore all of our options.
I think it's an option worth looking at. I think the determining factor is going to be your capitalization rate. How much time, what does it cost, and how much time does it buy you? And if the capitalization rate of that is less than the capitalization rate of building a jail, then you're spending money for no gain. And then you got to look at the operational cost of this compared to the facility that we've been contemplating up to this point. What is the square footage comparison for operating a less secure and a traditional jail that we've been talking about? And then you would compute all of those numbers in two columns, and then you can make a reasonable decision as to whether it be worth pursuing or not.
And I guess my question is, in this company, can they analyze that information for us with our $45,000 fee?
Give me the figures and the calculator, and I can answer it for you.
They probably could, but I think this is going to focus more on can we put what's been talked about so far on that site.
Yeah, but the one thing, Mr. Boone and I had a discussion, I think, yesterday. One consideration, and I don't know how you could put a price on this, but I mentioned in that conversation that if you did a less secure facility, it could perhaps buy you time on the back end, that you would not fill the jail that you plan to build up as fast once you built it. And you may be able to rent additional space out to someone else. But jails a lot like landfills. They got a bad tendency to fill up a whole lot faster than you ever imagined. Okay. So where were we? Is there a motion?
Before anybody makes a motion, I was just going to say, just going to add that, we've talked about at our various planning retreats what we might build, whether it be stuff on the cheap or going ahead and getting a long-term fix and just dealing with it. But either way, I mean, paying for it probably out of just current cash flow probably is not in the cards. So I'm not making a motion to this effect. I'm just kind of saying it out loud. It would be my intent that if we were to pay for it, or if we got to borrow money to pay for it, we do it on a GO bond, and I would think probably during the primary of 2014, which is just a little over a year, that might be an appropriate time. If things get pushed out, maybe doing it in November of 2014. But I would say my preference would probably for it to be done in May, or during the primary election.
Well, as I discussed before, Commissioner Robertson, if we do have to borrow a large amount of money, I agree with you. My preference would be a GO bond. I certainly wouldn't get pinned down to any particular date or anything, but if we borrow a large amount of money, I think that's the route we should follow.
Well, I'll say this, and here we go again. Some people are going to disagree, obviously, but if we were sitting here in a situation and I was convinced that we needed a jail, and if the revenue stream would support the debt of the debt service, and if the cost of housing prisoners approached or exceeded the cost of the debt service on the jail, in my mind, it would be foolish not to borrow the money to build the jail. Now that is no political consideration whatsoever. And I know that good business decisions sometimes make poor political decisions. I understand that, but I think sometimes in business you have to spend money and you have to borrow money in order to save money. Now, that is usually not the case, and sometimes it is. So while I agree with everything that's been said here, it would be my preference that we do it on a GO bond. However, I don't know how much longer I'm going to be here, but if I remain here long enough that the economy recovers sufficiently, that there is a revenue stream that would support the debt service on the general numbers that have been proposed by staff, and the cost of housing those prisoners somewhere else exceeds the annual debt service on the jail, then I would vote to borrow the money to build a jail. And the reason I simply would is because that's the way I would handle my own money. I just would. There have been times in business when I borrowed money in order to enter into an enterprise because the potential of engaging in that enterprise exceeded the amount of the debt service I incurred upon embarking in that business. That was a business decision. And we can sit here sometimes and we can say, well, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do that, because I'm not going to spend taxpayers' money. Sometimes it behooves you to do that, folks. It just does. It's good business sense. Now, I'm not saying we're to do it now, because if you know, I think I got everybody sufficiently depressed by the letter I wrote in the Record and Landmark this weekend about the economy in the future, that they would disdain the borrowing of any money right now, and that is my philosophy under the present economic conditions. But I think there could come a time when it would be in our best interest to move expeditiously on. That shall not meet the approval of some, but I'm as sincere in anyone in my effort to save the county money. So do we have a motion yet?
You know, the motion is to authorize, is there a budget amendment?
I think we've already set the money aside.
It's already been taken care of.
Oh, okay.
We did that
All
in
right.
planning session.
I'll make the motion that we authorize the $45,000 for further architectural review and evaluations for programming and preliminary design and initial site analysis.
Okay, can I ask one question? We know these folks pretty well, and we got a lot of confidence in them.
Yeah, they've worked with the sheriff's office and the jail folks in the past, but they've been really good to work with from our perspective as well. I would trust them, and they're well recommended.
But let me say one more thing, Mr. Robertson, and Doug here just a minute. All the discussion, and I'm not going to be too hard because I know personal conditions and situations as they are. But most of I'll just say all of the initiative, quite frankly, in regard to the discussion for jail construction, has come from this board. Yet we are not the day-to-day managers of this facility. I think the discussion would benefit from it. I think the education process for the public would benefit from it if there was some actual discussion from the people in charge of overseeing this facility, if they would come before this board and make their case for it. They do so privately. They do not do so publicly. And I think the process of discussion and education of the public, quite frankly, is poorly served by that. Okay. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Final administrative matter is a request for approval of the March 19th, 2013 minutes.
Okay. Motion for approval.
So moved.
Motion to approve comes from Commissioner Boone. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We have one announcement of vacancies occurring on boards and commissions. It's memo number 9, Nursing Home Advisory Board. We have one announcement of a vacancy. Appointments to boards and commissions. We have none. Unfinished business. Public comment period. New business. Mr. Boone, I'll let you make a few comments on House Bill 321 if you like.
I think everybody has seen this bill. It was in our agenda packet. Our county manager sent out a message about this last week, I believe. But apparently the state requires redundant reports in solid waste, and this bill would just eliminate some of those requirements. Apparently our staff spends at least 2 weeks, or spent 2 weeks this year just basically filling out redundant reports, and this bill would just rectify that situation. I think eliminate a little bit of needless regulation, make government operate just a little bit more efficiently. And so I think we should, pass a resolution urging our representatives in the General Assembly to approve House Bill 321. Anybody who's read this, I don't think that should be controversial. It's like a no-brainer.
I agree.
To me.
Is that House? I read the email, Mr. Boone, and I apologize. Has that bill, it has been introduced?
It's been introduced, yeah.
Okay. You know when it'll be voted on?
I do not.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't even know if it's gone through committee yet.
Yeah.
Well, they normally pass one on first reading and assign it to committee, and then it sits there for a while, so.
Well, is it your preference we instruct the clerk to craft a resolution, we'd adopt it at our next meeting, or would we not be as well served by the clerk writing a letter to a legislative delegation urging them to vote for it?
I think that would be fine. Just write a letter urging them to vote for it.
Okay, I think we can
I
move
don't think
on.
we need a fancy resolution with a whole lot of whereas.
Okay. Well, I'm fixing to introduce one, but it wasn't
Oh,
my
okay.
idea.
Okay.
So, you would amend your motion to instruct the clerk to write a letter, and we'd just sign it and send it? Is that
Yeah,
fine?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, sure.
All right, that's the motion. Then, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously. At this point, I'd like to discuss Senate Bill number 81, and try to explain to everyone's satisfaction my change of heart. Senate Bill 81 came out, it was introduced by Senator Russo out of Mecklenburg County, and it was a bill that would give the Charlotte Douglas Airport Authority a great degree of autonomy, separate from the city of Charlotte. There was concern about the direction that the city was taking in terms of the governance of that airport. I first heard of this bill from Sean Dorsch, who is the chairman of the Charlotte Douglas Airport Authority. And he contacted me first, since I am chairman of the Statesville Airport Commission. And I expressed to him in our first conversations my concerns about it, that I had been led to believe and had read the bill and was concerned that this authority would not only be given to the Charlotte Airport Authority, it would be given to boards of commissioners and airport commissions or authorities all across the state. There was some disagreement between the two of us, but folks that I have a lot of confidence in read the bill and agreed that at best it was uncertain what the intent was. I've had communication with him by email. I've talked to Senator Curtis, Representative Brawley, Representative Turner, and I believe that's all. I am satisfied now that the wording in the bill does not impact the Statesville Airport. Iredell County has a very good working relationship with the Statesville Airport. The City Council has a good working relationship with the Statesville Regional Airport Commission. I do not want anything to damage that. In its present form as it exists today, that has been voted on, this bill does nothing to harm that. It is limited to the airports within the confines of Mecklenburg County. Now, the whole story is this, and the elected officials in Raleigh, quite frankly, they're being very polite. They're trying to pass a bill that some people don't like, and they don't want to stir them up too much. Well, I don't have any skin in that game, so I can be a little more frank about it. The Charlotte Airport Authority has roughly $400 million in their capital fund balance. And they're concerned if their rules of governance change, then City Council in Charlotte will get their hands on some of that money. And City Council will begin to have taxing authority to impose parking fees and so forth at the airport. Not many people are aware that the Charlotte Airport is the 6th busiest airport in the world. And it primarily is because their per passenger fee is 97 cents. The next lowest in the country is $4. So airlines direct flights through Charlotte. They make that a transfer hub for a lot of flights. There are more people in the state of South Carolina who embark on an airport at Charlotte Douglas than embark on an aircraft in the entire state of South Carolina. It is truly a southeastern regional airport. And the goal of the airport authorities is to continue to see it grow and continue to maintain the integrity of that fund balance. You can say what you want to about Jerry Orr, but he does know how to run an airport, and he's been very successful, and he's going to be retiring. And a lot of people are concerned that his retirement and this attempt by what some people at the airport consider an encroachment by City Council will jeopardize the ability of the airport to be self-funding in its future endeavors to build capital. It is a really good facility. I have personally flown planes in and out of there, and it is as good an airport, as modern airport as you'll find anywhere. So in its present state as it exists right now, I have no trouble supporting this bill, so I would introduce the following resolution in support of it. Whereas the Charlotte Douglas Airport is the sixth busiest airport in the world, having attracted passenger flights and freight carriers through its efficient operations, and whereas the Charlotte Douglas Airport has become a substantial economic asset to the central Piedmont region of North Carolina, upstate South Carolina, and southern Virginia, and whereas it is in the best interest of these areas to be served by an airport that continues to be modern, competitive, and responsive to the transportation needs of the traveling public and freight carriers, and whereas all of the surrounding counties have an economic interest in the continued success of the Charlotte Douglas Airport, and whereas an airport authority consisting of representatives of the people serving throughout the surrounding counties would be consistently aware of the traveling needs of their communities, and whereas Senate Bill 81 seeks to amend the governance of airports only in Mecklenburg County and will no way impact the Statesville Regional Airport or the City of Statesville oversight of its airport, and whereas Senate Bill does not require any taxes to be levied upon the citizens of the surrounding counties, now therefore be it resolved that the Iredell County Board of Commissioners, through the adoption of this resolution, express support of Senate Bill 81 and encourage our legislative delegation to cast a vote for its passage. That will be adopted this the second day of April 2013 by the Iredell County Board of Commissioners. And I move we adopt this resolution. Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. County Manager's report.
Very quickly, I'm going to pass down a flyer that was given to me by our tax assessor's office. And the flyer talks about the upcoming Tax and Tag Together initiative through the state. And this is basically where car property taxes are going to be paid at the same time as the registration for the cars. What I would suggest, just for people who are interested in this, is going to our website. We have some information on it. The notices are going to start coming out, and I think it's going to be not really a shock to people, but definitely surprising that it's changed up some, and there's going to be a lot of questions. I'll put it that way. I haven't seen anything in the paper or on TV much talking about this, but I thought I'd take the opportunity just to bring it out. And that's all I have to report.
Okay. All right. I would move we go into closed session in regards to personnel under General Statute 143-318-11A6. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
pretty impressive.
You're dedicated.
There will be no action as a result of our closed session this evening. Having said that, I'd offer a motion that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries unanimously.
See y'all later.